Hello, everyone. Hey, Madison.
Hey,
Thanks for joining. How you doing, mate? You well?
I'm doing well. How about you?
I'm very well, and I'm I'm kind of laughing as we started there because I made a reference to a very 90s, a very niche reference. It's a 90s northeast of England reference to two people, PJ and Duncan, who are now known as Ant and Dec. I don't know. Anyway, you can ignore that. And someone got it. Daniel got it. So.
Of course, Daniel got it.
Of
Yep.
course, Daniel, I got it right. Yeah, you would
Yeah.
get it. Anyway, sorry, that was just me immediately being very random there. Madison, do you want to quickly introduce yourself so we know who you are? We know.
Yeah, absolutely. So first off, thank you very much for having me on. It's great as one of the many Power BI guys out there. It's great to be talking to the Power BI guy. I love that. But yeah, no, my name is Madison Giammaria. Um, I am newer to posting content on like LinkedIn and stuff and sharing. I've been doing the data stuff for a while, but for the longest time, I had no idea that there was this huge active community, sharing their work and everything like that. So kind of wish I found it a little earlier. But yeah, so I have been with my current company for the past 10 years.
Nice. That's a while.
Yeah, it's been we do it's a business intelligence project for Navy contract, Navy readiness, U.S. Navy, and I started out pretty new as it was pretty early in my career. They brought me on as a Cognos support author. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Cognos. It's a competitor with Power BI and other business intelligence, nowhere near as great as Power BI. But it does a couple things. It does a couple things well. And so I was started on with that. And then I kind of moved more into ETL, kind of some data engineering stuff over for our data warehouse. And with that, actually went on to do a little bit of Spark and stuff with like HFS for a little bit of time. That was a lot of fun. And then there became a stronger need for like visual analytics and a stronger need for reporting. So what we did on our team is we split our development team into two teams. So we had like the data center team and then the visual analytics team of developers. Okay. And so I went on to lead the visual analytics team while one of my coworkers led the data center team. And right around that time, it was probably a little bit before that, we brought on Power BI. And I have a weird path into Power BI. I think that's common with a lot of folks.
They're the best paths. The weird paths are the most fun, right? Go on.
Right. So they brought on Power BI, and I was like, oh, this is cool. I didn't quite understand why we were getting into it because we had Cognos. Now I get it. But right from the start, we had a couple folks that were like big idea folks, and they realized that the out-of-the-box visuals didn't meet some of the needs.
That's putting it nicely, no?
Right. Well, yeah, exactly. There was, and this was back in. So yeah, let me give a timestamp on it. This was back in 2019.
Okay. Yeah.
So right away, my intro into Power BI around that time was I was also in charge of learning the Power BI custom visuals API and creating custom visuals. Cool. Yeah, it was really cool. Definitely kind of deep dive into all that was a lot. But as I was learning Power BI, I was also creating custom visuals. So then I did that for some time. And I think it was probably one of your posts or someone else a couple of years ago posted about Deneb and Vega and Vega Lite. And I knew D3.js, but I had heard of Vega, but I didn't really ever look into it, didn't know anything about it. So I was like, what is this? What, like, is this another? Because I knew a little bit of Charticulator, like,
yeah, sure.
Wasn't a huge fan of it. But with Deneb, I was like, this looks really interesting. And then I started playing with it. I'm like, man, this eliminates the need to like create like a
Yeah,
lot of cases for custom visuals and all that kind of stuff. So, um, and then this past fall, um, during that time, I had helped a couple of folks out on the forums and everything, and I actually became a super user, so that was pretty cool. Um,
that's right. Nice one.
and yeah, that's pretty much where we are now. Just
That's pretty. That's a thorough journey through your life and
yeah,
stuff.
I
I
know I
like it.
could have
No,
went
no,
on
no.
there.
No, you didn't. No, no. I meant that in the most positive sense, mate. I enjoy. What I actually really like about that sort of thing is obviously from how I see people, obviously through their online presence, be it LinkedIn in your case or Twitter or whatever. You just see like such a small portion of what they do. Like when I, and I mean this of course with all due respect. Like when I see you on LinkedIn, I see you as a person who creates cool stuff with Deneb. But all this other stuff that you do in the journey I took to get there, it's really interesting, right?
Yeah, yeah, no, and so it's funny because in my day job, the custom visual stuff was like early on. We're doing a lot less of that, and
Mm,
it's really a lot more of the traditional chart types and what you would expect, like following all the data visualization rules and that
mm,
kind of stuff.
mm.
So it's all this outside stuff where I feel like I get to kind of unleash some creativity and explore and all that. That's not the stuff that I really get to do in my day-to-day job currently. So
Understand, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but this is actually it's a common thing that comes up when you're talking about like data visualization and stuff. It's nice to have that to kind of to do because it allows you like to be a bit creative and explore like ideas of how things look. It's a very different part from what the rest of the job is, you know?
Right, absolutely, absolutely. And then, yeah, and a special shout out to folks like you because your videos were definitely one of the things that got me like familiar with Vega
Mm,
Light and all that kind of stuff. And then I know there's other folks out there
cheers,
that
man.
post
And this is
resources and all that.
and it's amazing because like for me, obviously, like the person who got me was Kerry. So I saw Kerry's post and I was like, what's this? This seems really interesting. And then I spent probably the first like 2 months, maybe a little bit less, but basically trying to take Kerry's work, like copying and pasting it and trying to, and I was like, I'm getting somewhere, but I'm at the same time, I'm not getting where I want to be. It's like, let's just start from the start, Ben. You're not good enough to deal with what Kerry's doing right now. So it's like, let's just like how to do a line. And once you understand those little bits and pieces, then you build on it, right?
Right, right. And it's that's the thing. It's like an upfront investment. But like I watched your session on Radicat and you're like, it's
Ah,
not
yeah.
just clicky, clicky, draggy, draggy. It's
Mm.
clicky, 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 clicky. Like
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
doing a
yeah,
lot of clicking to get to where you want. And
yeah.
if you can know how to create these charts in Deneb, sometimes that's a better option because you can kind of have a lot more control over what the output ends up
Co-
looking like.
Completely. And quite often I'll say things like when I'm presenting something or doing a training or whatever. And as I say, I know for a fact I don't do it myself. For example, I'll quite often say, and I think I say to make it sound more accessible because when you're showing someone Deneb, therefore Vega, in my case Vega Lite for the first time, it can be quite overwhelming. So what I tend to say is like, of course, if you're going to create like a standard bar chart, you're not going to use Deneb, you're not going to use Vega Lite. But I tell you what, honestly, I do, and I want to, because once you've done it, it's just so much nicer and easier. I know it sounds ridiculous because of all that code you've got there, but if I want to do something, I've gotten to the point where I'm genuinely more comfortable just doing it in Deneb. It's a weird thing. And I guess for performance issues, it's not the best, but it doesn't make a huge difference. So I'm like, if I'm building a report and I want it to look exactly how I want it to look, I'm not going to waste my time using a core visual. Is maybe I shouldn't say that, but
Yeah,
I
well,
just
they
don't.
are. It sounds like Miguel has got awesome plans with the core visuals.
He
It's going
does.
to be exciting to see where all that goes. But in the meantime, yeah, I mean, you just can't deny with some of the things
Mm,
that the level of control that you have. It ends up in some cases, unless you're talking about just a very standard like bar chart or whatever. In a lot of cases, it can be
yeah.
once you become familiar with this stuff, it can be a lot quicker to
Mm.
develop. And
But this is also key to what I'm saying is, and yes, I always make sure I'm careful and I say Miguel's doing a great job because he is. It's amazing what he's doing, but it's not about what Miguel's doing with the visuals themselves, what's possible. For me, that's not the problem. The problem is more the more options that are available, the more things you can do, the harder it is to do those things, because the options you're kind of restricted by the user interface that comes with Power BI desktop, whether you're using on object formatting or you're using whatever the off object formatting, I'm not sure what that's called, or not on object formatting. It's still, I don't like how it feels to find all the things. And for that reason, typing a little bit of code is sometimes just feels easier. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I totally get that and totally agree. Like, Bas Doman, he has tons of videos, and some of the stuff, I was talking to Daniel about this yesterday. He'll take just a regular core visual, and then he'll do all these configurations and all these settings and produce some other visual that was not the original intent at all, like completely separate from the original intent. And I'm thinking, like, that is awesome if you know how to do that. I know I see, I think I saw Gustav's on here. He can do that kind of stuff and everything.
Yeah.
So more power to the folks that can do that kind of stuff. Yeah. But if it's a trade-off, right? If you can certainly go that route, or you can decide, hey, I want to kind of construct it in code and, not go full-on custom visual, but kind of do it in the Vega Lite or Vega. That's also a very good option.
Yeah. I always remember when I worked for BASF, which was a while ago, I guess it was before 2019, yeah. And I was had a project with someone, and there wasn't a visual that he was happy with that suited his requirements, and he was like, let's just build our own visual then. And I was just kind of, no, we're not going to do that, okay? Because I did not absolutely have the skill set to be playing around or creating my own custom visuals. But of course, now that we have something like Deneb, where, as you said, it's kind of, I find Deneb's like, I hope Daniel's not going to like murder me for saying this. Sometimes I feel like Deneb itself, whilst it is a visual in Power BI, it doesn't so much feel like a visual, because it's a kind of a conduit for the code, right? So what I'm saying, and when people say, what visual is Deneb? I'm like, well, it just allows you to use a code in there. So what Daniel's done is all his magic that I don't understand to make that work. It's like between the you have this, and then Deneb's right in the middle,
right.
So Daniel, I'm sorry for saying that.
Well, I think that was his intent, right? So
I hope so.
I can't imagine, because I'll double down on that, and I think that was his intent. Yeah. And yeah, just from someone that has created custom, like full-on custom visuals before, the difference is so someone that's created custom visuals before, what you have to think about is, you really have even more control with that. But for the juice to be worth the squeeze, you need to think about how to make it fit your use case within any other potential relevant use case too, because so that comes with setting up the formatting properties and making it configurable for another report author or yourself to kind of use that visual down the line. With Deneb, because the development time is so much quicker, you can afford to be like more bespoke. You can make it more focused on your use case, and you don't have to reuse that code again for the next scenario. I mean, you can with like templating, so that's awesome that Daniel gave us that too. But yeah, it's kind of a different way of going about it.
One of the things, because obviously the challenges that the question that you always get with Deneb is like, can I use it in my organization because of the knowledge required, right? And a lot of companies don't either have anyone, or they have one person, therefore they don't really like using it. And the templates are great for that. What I started doing recently also was basically just setting up a situation where you would have the visual, and then if you wanted to replicate it, all you had to do is just pull in the measure and like just change, like you would instead of calling it a name, I would just call I would just call it metric, and then I would call it metric PY. So you bring in the measure, you just change the name actually in Deneb to metric, and then it appears, and then metric PY, and it's just everything just like appears. You don't have to do anything. You don't even have to look at the code. It's just already set up as soon as you actually change the name of the measure. there are nice options to get around that, you know.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, that's a huge, the templating one. And my understanding is there's some work in going into that to make it even better. But the templating option, that's something that I haven't even, like, I see a ton of value in it, but I haven't taken advantage of it yet. I saw recently Andre um, posted a GitHub repository with just a ton of templates in it for anyone to use. I'm like,
There are
oh,
loads.
that's awesome. So like,
Yeah.
you don't even have to really learn Vega because his are in Vega. You don't even have to learn Vega as long as you know enough to configure it to use your measures and your categories and all that kind of stuff. Then you get the benefit of the visual that he created.
Yeah, for sure. No, the templates, I also underutilize templates, to be honest, because they just literally use nice. That's cool. Yeah, that's nice. I underutilize templates as well. I kind of, if I'm doing a visual, I kind of put them to one side and stuff and say that's there, but I haven't really gone through all the different possibilities of a thing I use Taze. Taze from South Africa. He has some really cool templates as well. But yes, basically, it's just nice to see more and more become available. I can't remember how long Deneb actually existed for. I'm sure Daniel will correct me, but I'd say what
3 years.
Yeah, it sounds about right.
Close to that, I think.
Yeah. So it's getting to a nice stage where, I mean, I asked the question sometimes. Like the other day, I was in Oslo for Fabric February, and I did the same presentation that you saw for the Radicad one. I did that there, and I always just ask, even if I'm not public preview start 3 years ago, thanks Daniel. Even if I'm not doing it something Deneb, if it's a data visualization, I'll always try to sneak in the question who knows Deneb, like who's heard of it, just to kind of gauge like where the numbers are. It's nice. It like incrementally grows, you know. It's quite cool.
Right.
And of course, the more people who know about it, the more likely it is it's okay to use it, you know.
Right. Speaking of that that session that you did, though, there was a couple of things in there that I really liked, like the captions or using text or whatever. That's something that I've seen in a couple data visualization books, and so one of those things where I'm always like, when I see it, I'm like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. It's something really simple to do to add additional context, but I often forget to actually do it.
It's easier said than done, right? Because I mean, obviously, when I did that presentation, I'm doing it in a situation where I'm not using many visuals, and I know, and obviously, pretty much other than the stuff that I do in my spare time for fun, to play around and to learn, everything that I do is business reporting. So it really depends on what you're actually creating. If you're the rules of business reporting and infographics are just two completely different situations, right? And infographics, I think, are more text friendly, whilst business reporting, it tends to be, we want the data, that's what we want the information, and then like everything else, like, so it's tough to balance it. But when I started like doing the presentation, I was obviously slowly building up the report piece by piece, and I was just happy, like by the end I was actually thinking, actually that looks quite okay. I thought if I get to the end and it looks awful, it's going to completely step on my own point. But I was really happy that I got there, and it was all right.
I was thinking the same thing. I love just the monochrome and then the one color to highlight that, like orange yellow. And then I really liked something. There was nothing complex about it, but just you layering that shape behind the scatter plot to show those like higher values. I was like, that's something that's really cool. It's a cool technique there.
I honestly, I really, really dislike stacking visuals. Like I made an exception there because it's a rectangle. It's not like a visual on top of a visual. That's okay with, but tends to be, if anyone shows me a solution to a problem and it involves stacking visuals, I will just completely reject it. But in that case, that's all right.
Right. And just like along the lines with stacking, like if you have two visuals and they have to share an axis, that's where, again, Vega Light, layout, composite layouts and everything, That's really useful. That kind of eliminated all that trying to get the axes to line up in multiple visuals is never a good strategy.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. One of the things I say quite often when I'm like starting is that the documentation for this stuff is actually really good and very cool. But I wasn't sure, like, just get your opinion, because I've always found that it is very good. What it's very bad at is anything related to axes or text. Like and I think they cheat a little bit, because if you look at all the examples, very few of them have stuff like data labels, or very few of them have like any sort of a different style of a date on the x-axis, for example. That for me was the hardest part of learning, to actually understand how that works, because they're very limited in what they show in that regard. And I wish that it could be improved somehow.
There are definitely some holes in the documentation. There's a lot of things where you have to kind of either find an example that's not on the examples page and kind of reverse engineer it, or try to figure out what's going on. Yeah, I mean, that's the documentation is really helpful, but where I've seen, or where I've had the most success, is taking an example and just really trying to tweak little things first and see how it changes, especially early on. If you take if you're, a little bit more familiar with Vega or Vega Lite, and you take a spec that's more complicated, then try to really alter it or whatever, you're going to learn a lot of techniques along the way. There's definitely techniques that people have implemented that were not like intended by the original like developers. But it works, and it's kind of cool that way.
I found weird stuff. Like I forget what I was trying to do. Actually, I wish I hadn't forgotten, because I've probably forgotten how to do it now completely. Anyway, before I ramble on too much, I was trying to work out how to do something, and there was no documentation for it whatsoever within Vega Lite. But I was keep searching and searching, but it existed in Vega, and I was like, oh, it's annoying because I can't do Vega in the Vega Lite. But I was like, fuck it, check it anyway, and it worked. Like,
there you go.
Yeah, I was like, well, that was unexpected, because there's nothing that says that should work in the Vega Lite documentation. It doesn't state it exists at all, but it did work.
Yeah. Now, do you ever take, like, when you're working in Vega Lite, I usually start a lot of my development in the Vega editor.
Yes.
That's probably going to change soon when we get like some new capabilities that Daniel's working on for Deneb, but I'll start there. And then do you ever use I know you say you stick with Vega Lite, but do you ever look in the compiled Vega at all?
I do.
Okay. Because that's pretty cool how you can like find, auto-generated scales and refer to them in your Vega Lite and other properties and all that. I find that extremely useful, especially as a learning thing from going from Vega Lite to Vega. So I was just curious to know if you ever use that.
I'm at that point now where, I'm really torn as to what to learn next, So I'm like, okay, should I learn Vega, or should I learn SVG, or should I go Python route maybe? It's maybe I'm just getting examples that I don't know enough. So I've got too much to learn. Or also like D3 as well. I was like, that could be cool. And actually, I mentioned D3 a couple of months ago, and it was probably Daniel actually said, oh, the guys who did D3 have now done something else. What was it? There's another thing. I said, I don't know what it was, but I want to learn a couple more like visual kind of codes, and SVG is a cool one, especially with Power BI. We'll see.
Yeah, some of the stuff that folks are doing with the SVGs are wild. Yes, I agree with that comment there.
Observable plot, that's what it was. Yeah, that sounds really cool. And I'll just it wasn't sure. Yes, I've seen this also, Daniel, that I can contribute to the doc and examples, but I have to use Git. my famous disdain for Git. Yeah, that's another thing I have to learn as well. I know. I feel like I should just write them an email and say, can you please improve it, because I'm too lazy to learn and use Git.
Right.
But yeah. So what about yourself though? I mean, so obviously you got Vega. Like, is this something you're currently kind of leaning towards learning? What's on the next thing, or are you kind of too busy with the stuff that you do in the day to day?
I would actually really, as far as learning goes, I would like to learn React because there's a lot of cool stuff that you can do, like with combining React and D3 to create, full-on applications. Deneb is
Mm.
written using React, so that's one thing I'd like to learn. Um, as far as like projects go, I don't know if you saw like I think it was last week. I put out just a poll to see like what folks would think about having a Gantt custom visual.
Saw
Like
that, yeah.
like taking something like David Batchy's Gantt that he built in Vega, which is just amazing.
It is
Um,
awesome.
but making it so that it's you know works as a custom visual, so it's even easier. Like he did all the work
Mm.
by making this Vega visual, but then if you take it one step further and make it into a custom visual, where users that don't want to learn Vega or even open up the Deneb editor at all, they'd be able to take advantage of a visual like that. So that's something I was just kind of kicking around.
What was the what were the results of the poll? Were people for it?
Yeah, so I mean, it was very, very, very small sample size, but overwhelmingly, yeah, people were for
Mm.
it. There was one person that said that AppSource gives them what they need. Everyone else said they can either get it done with SVG or Deneb. So I think, kind of what I was seeing there is like there's some options in AppSource, but they don't really meet the need there.
Mm.
So
It's actually an interesting idea that I'd be curious to say that I would be curious to try to get the information as to what are the most created visuals in Deneb, SVG, all these things. Because if you know that, then you see where the gap is, what people are actually missing, what they're primarily using it for, and you can take that and then build those things as their own custom visuals. Because if everyone's like, for example, what is the most downloaded Deneb template on GitHub? Because if that's the most, then okay, that's what people are kind of leaning more towards. That's the most requested visual that doesn't exist. And then take that and just create it. That could be interesting.
that would be really interesting. I would bet money that Gantt would be near the top of the list.
I would agree with that. Yeah, I
But
see
it'd
a
be
lot of
really
it kicking
interesting
around.
to, yeah.
Gantt is a massive use case for data coming out of Primavera P6. All app source options are somewhere. Okay. Interesting.
I saw that comment before on the post, and I'm not familiar. I'm wondering. I want to do some research to see how it's different from like Microsoft Project, all that. But I mean, I've heard really good things. I'm just not familiar with the product.
Me neither. I want to Google it at the same time, but I'm not very good at Googling and talking. So I'll do that later and just pretend to be in the know as we talk now. If you have a link for that, Imran, feel free to. Can you put links in? I think you can. I'm not sure. Feel free to do it. But yeah, it's there's a lot, and I think it's nice just to be a play around sometimes as well, just like create some stuff and what I say this quite often, but it's very true. I think once you start doing stuff with visuals that aren't just the core visuals, you will really quickly understand visualization much better because you're making choices, and this is one of the things I was kind of alluding to in this that presentation, your report looks boring and nobody cares, was that when everything's just out of the box, you can just click on it and put it down, and you can say, okay, it's finished now, but when you have to do everything yourself, like bit by bit, and build it up and think about each choice that you're making, you become far more precise when you don't just create visuals, use any visuals, and that's part of the problem is for me is that it becomes quite addictive in a way to have that control, to have that ability to say, I want this thing there, that thing needs to be there. So even though the core visuals get better and better, it's never going to be possible to have that amount of flexibility as you do with stuff like Deneb or SVG, because, and it shouldn't be either. It's not. It's an unfair standard to set.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, it's a different kind of approach, right? It's the chart type selection, like what you can do with like Excel, out of the box, or the same kind of thing. You
Mm.
pick a chart type and then you go from there. Versus more the grammar graphics approach, which from a clicky, draggy point of view,
Mm.
Tableau does really well, right?
Mm.
So they've kind of taken that click and drag,
Mm.
capability, but applied it to a grammar graphics kind of way of going about it.
Oh, this is interesting though, from Daniel. I get feedback that Deneb and HTML are used for prototyping proper custom visual ideas before they do full-blown development. That makes sense. So basically,
Yeah,
they'll create stuff with Deneb to see what they can do, and then if it works, then they'll kind of like a playground. They'll test to see the concept works, and then if it wants it to work, they'll okay, that's quite nice.
yeah. So fall 2022, I was in a cohort with Jeff Hare was teaching it, and
Mm-hmm.
so the creator of Vega and Vega Lite, co-creator. Um, and what he talked about with Vega Lite was really like a big motivator for him was prototyping, um, getting in there and allowing folks to do rapid prototyping, kind of see
That's
what their data
interesting.
looks like, and then change the
Mm.
encodings and the marks really quickly to kind of be able to tell the story that they need to be able to tell, but also just
Yeah.
prototype quickly. So, I know like he created Vega to be a little bit closer to like one step above D3, but the Vega Lite was really intended to, one of the big use cases was
Mm.
prototyping. And
That
so,
makes sense. I can
so that
understand
kind of
that.
aligns with what
Yeah,
Daniel was saying.
for sure. I think the only thing that still that frustrates me sometimes with doing stuff in Vega Lite is having to code in the interactivity part myself. Like when you click on it, that to adjust the opacity and stuff. Because obviously that existing out of the box with your core visuals, to having to kind of do that myself in with Vega Lite sometimes grates me a little bit. It's not a big deal. It's copy paste and then you got it again. That's it really.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's just different degrees of control. You have to trade that off for, but I totally understand. It's really, that's one of the things that's like really nice. It's, that Power BI does really well. It's like intuitive, just
Yeah.
how the interactivity works, and then you can
Mm.
manipulate it a little bit. But speaking of interactivity, I'm working on testing a couple new features coming out for Deneb, specifically for Vega, that'll allow us to do a lot more complex selections. Like right now, you've got this simple point selection where you can
Mm-hmm.
select or multi-select points, and then you click the background and you clear selections. The kind of intuitive approach. But with this new capability, we'll be able to do stuff like legend selectors, or really apply any kind of logic that we want
That's
to
cool.
do all different types of selections. So that's something that's very new that Daniel's working on right now and
That's awesome.
feedback on. So that's exciting, but that's probably at least up front looking more like a Vega only thing. But but getting back to all that, like I totally get you with that. Is one of the harder things to do. That not only encoding the selections, like, or making the selections, but also representing that on your visual, like changing
Yeah.
automatically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just funny, actually, based on what you just said, it kind of gives me it's the Vega Lite thing. And I always say I very rarely, because I do primarily business reporting, I very rarely feel restricted by Vega Lite, and I feel to move to Vega. But there are moments where that's really cool. I'd love to be able to do that. But the way you just described it, like this is going to be like probably a Vega only, not a Vega Lite feed. It kind of feels like when you're at a company and you're only using Power BI Pro and they have the premium features, you're like, oh man, that sucks. I want to have those cool features as well.
So so I can completely relate to that. So for where I work, like where everything, doing anything government related moves really slow, and we're going to get to the cloud eventually. But for the longest time, I've been in Power BI on premise, so report server.
Oh,
So
wow, okay.
I see all these features come out and folks posting about it. I just feel like I'm like, oh, that looks so awesome. And like I can explore them in my own time, and I
Of
do,
course,
and
yeah.
everything. But to be able to use those, regularly, like all that the cool stuff that's constantly coming out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wish that when Power BI released new features and they had the blog post to come with it, I really do strongly believe at the top of every page in big freaking letters, it should say premium only feature. It drives me crazy to get through the entire blog, and then halfway through, and in a sentence, it just says, "This is a pre." It's like, don't do that to me, man. You had the last one, which I thought was bizarre, and I'm sure there's good reason for it. It was the dynamic report subscription, yeah,
Okay.
and I was like, that's awesome, because this feature should exist, and I'm happy that it exists now. And I was reading the article, and I was like, again, halfway down, and it's not even PPU, it's just premium capacity. So it's not pro premium capacity. I was like, really? For report subscriptions? That's not cool. And again, I'm sure there is a good reason for it, because obviously we just see this tiny little world and there's all that complexity behind it. But just don't get me so excited. Just say at the very top, premium only. Don't read it, Ben Ferry. You're going to be sad. Yeah, you're going to. But actually, just and not on that light, also this comment by Daniel, just to say, yes, it's an insight how much effort Microsoft has put into making the things we take for granted. I think that was related to the interactivity between the visuals. But it's true. It's easy to kind of sit and kind of complain a bit sometimes, but it's, you know, there are complexities that I will never fully understand. So fair enough. So
yeah, it's kind of neat when you think about all the stuff that Big Light or Deneb does do for you to be as close to the Power BI behavior, at least out of the box.
yeah.
Like the amount of things that Daniel's considered, it's just kind of like as he's walked through his thought process on a lot of these things and explained to me. I'm just like, he's like playing like 4D chess, and I'm just trying to keep up. He's analyzed every angle, everything, and it's really cool.
Yeah. When people show me this stuff sometimes, and they give me like a demo of, or this is what we're doing, and then they say like, oh, do you have any feedback, or like, what do you think of it? And sometimes I'll just be like still trying to like take it all in before I can say anything, you know. And then I'll do that and say, okay, we'll have this, and it's going to do that. And what do you think? I'm like, okay, yeah, let's just. I'll trying to think of something really clever and interesting to say right now, but I'm just still trying to process everything. And then they come back, oh yeah, because for that we're thinking that maybe this could be better. I'm like, yep, I agree with that. It's hard when people are so good at like developing or kind of come with these ideas and thinking of things from like 15 different perspectives. To dive into that level is very difficult. So yeah, it's very impressive.
Yeah, very neat.
I mentioned this briefly before. So one of the things I really want to do is start learning SVG, and because there's Steve who does lots of SVG work. He does some very, very impressive stuff. I would love to try dive into that, and also Andre as well. And I'm hoping. Do you know there's a data viz conference on the Faroe Islands in a couple of months?
Oh, okay.
Which I really will. I'm gonna present something there. I'm really looking forward to it. So maybe you should get yourself across to that as well, mate. Come to the Power BI Data Viz conference. There'll be SVG. Then actually, I'll try and post the link. I'm gonna try and talk and type at the same time. But it's like a very viz.fo. So even I can do that. It's like the easiest thing in the world.
Yeah, I need to check that out.
Yeah, do it. It's I mean, to be honest, I'm excited to, talk at another conference, but also on the Faroe Islands. That's very cool,
Is that something that's become kind of, second nature for you? Like talking at these conferences and stuff, or is it just like
no,
scary,
I haven't done it
every time?
No, because I've only done it twice. Like I've done it like I've done remote like sessions quite often, but the to do stuff in person is hey Carrie, how you going?
Hey.
To do stuff in person is still like hours. So the one in Oslo was really interesting because that was the second time. I'd done one before in Italy, in Bologna, I think it was. No, Parma. That's right, Parma. And but last week I was meant to be presenting just actually a version of this live stream live from Oslo. So it was actually really cool. There was me and Mike Carlo. We were just like sitting there in this room full of people them looking at us as we were talking and also streaming live at the same time. Went really well. It was good fun. But as I was sitting at the airport waiting to get the flight to Oslo, they messaged me and they said, can you do a second session? This report looks boring and nobody cares because someone's sick, unfortunately, and we have a gap. And I was like, oh man, I've never done it before, and that's terrifying. But I was like, yeah, fuck it, let's just do it. Let's see how it goes. This annoying thing about that was every single presentation that I do that I have is all in the cloud, of course, like everyone's stuff is. But for that presentation, it was only stored on my desktop here at home, and I was, of course, at the airport. So I had to call my wife, and I was like, Barbara, can you go and switch on my computer and get this file and then put it in my? I was like, really, the only file that I need I don't have is ridiculous.
Oh man, you got it done.
You got it done. I was very appreciative. But no, sorry, very long answer to your question. I still find it like scary, you know, and I like that I find it quite scary because it kind of makes me like more motivated and stuff. But once I get started, I do really enjoy presenting, I have to say. I just always just look at it as like, you know, talking to like a couple of people who are my friends, and then everything else just is nice, you know.
Well, and I imagine doing these has got to be helpful towards that as well. I mean, you've done, I think, like close to 100 of these, or
I actually lost count, but I should start counting again because I don't want to miss the number 100. But it's actually pretty close now, actually. Yeah.
That's awesome. So like you've gotten to talk to so many folks in the community and all that. That's scary in a good way.
Yeah, exactly. Scary in a good way. I guess it's like they feel different because with these, it's like a conversation. And I guess what I fear most when I'm presenting something, especially when it's quite opinion based, because Deneb's different. Because Deneb is like, this is how you do that thing, and if you do this thing, that will appear. But when I'm doing a presentation that's like kind of feels a lot based on my opinion, like again, the one that you saw for Radicad was yes, I backed it up with quotes from proper data viz people, but a lot of what I was talking about, I thought was just kind of like saying, okay, these are my opinions. And I was a bit worried about someone just saying, Ben, all of that you said was just wrong. And it's terrible.
What you did though was really good is you just put the disclaimer out there. Like you made it clear, like this is what you think, these are your opinions. And that's I really like that kind of mode, like, you know, going about it that way. One of the things I thought about doing was, you know, I've been meaning to like start a blog, just more so for me, because I'll find myself having to relearn the same things over and over.
Oh yeah.
I'll forget. So if I have something to refer to, that'd be great. And if anyone else finds it useful, I mean, that's just like a bonus to me. But I was thinking about if I do that, I would want to put like the disclaimer, like, you may have a completely better way of doing this. This is just the way I think of doing it. If you have a better way, let me know.
Exactly.
So I can improve. And if you approach it like that, I mean, I feel like you can't go wrong.
No, I think, and also obviously from I'm getting more comfortable with it, absolutely. But also 99.9% people who will watch these things are there just to kind of like be nice as well, you know? Even if they disagree, they'll do so. Like, again, I think the second session that for the Power BI Fabric Summit, I think there was someone said that they generally disagreed with what I was saying. They did it in a respectful way. This is perfectly valid. But it was interesting because that person was also a graphic designer. She said, I'm a graphic designer. And I was like, yeah, this is the thing. If you're a graphic designer, you can probably do some pretty cool stuff, you know? But yes, generally, I mean, people are just there to kind of listen and kind of, I think Kerry just said it there, hear about other people's experiences. And I think I pretty much end also every one of the, when I very occasionally make a YouTube video, I'll always end it and say, if you do it differently, let me know so I can so I can learn as well. But it's, I love this. Your motivation to start the blog makes perfect sense, because I think so many people say that as well. You blog stuff down, so if you ever want to find it again, it's right there for you. And I sometimes feel like of all the people who have watched my YouTube videos, I account for at least 1/4 of the views, just so I can go back and remember what I did, you know?
Right. I love that. Yeah, that whole idea of doing the disclaimer. And I feel like it's a huge, by putting yourself out there too with this stuff, you know, even if someone isn't so pleasant with their feedback. You still have an opportunity to learn and improve. You know, if their points are valid, or if you try to understand them and everything.
Yeah,
So
completely.
I've seen a lot of that actually with stuff that other folks have been putting out, and people that have had the courage to give their 2 cents back and everything, led to this kind of iterative approach where the original poster would go and make updates, and it would get better and better and better. So there's some benefit to
completely.
getting that feedback.
Yeah. This thing that Daniel just wrote is really so true. I saw someone write something similar to this. Cunningham's Law. I didn't realize it was called that. The best way to get the right answer on the internet is not to ask a question, is to post the wrong answer. And I've seen this written before. Someone says that they'll go into, like, I don't know, Stack Overflow, and they'll ask a question, and then they'll log in from a second account and they'll post the wrong answer. Because as soon as you post the wrong answer, other people will come and correct your answer and tell you the right answer.
Brilliant.
Isn't it? That makes perfect. I love that. I would never have thought about that, but it's true. And 1 second, I brought this up accidentally. Coming from a design background, I believe anyone who can turn data into visuals that tell a story is worth hearing and listening to. Yeah, definitely agree with that for sure.
Yeah. Jasmine's one of my coworkers. Yeah, she's our UX architect.
Okay, nice. There you go. Cool. Yeah. So you've brought your crew. I like it.
Yeah. No, I can't see who all is out there, which is probably better, because I saw who's out there.
I was at work the day after the Radicat session went live. My colleagues wrote to me and she said, "Oh, that video that you did, you should put it on the work SharePoint so people at work can view as well." And I was like, "So did you watch it?" She said, "Yeah, I watched it." I was like, "Thank you for telling me afterwards, because if I'd known before that you were watching it, I would have been like 200% more terrified, you know?"
Yeah, that's so funny. It's kind of nice to just not even think about it, and if you have the opportunity, just not even think about who's watching, if anyone.
Yeah, no, it's a nice event. There was some great sessions and stuff, so I really liked it.
Yeah.
Also, Kerry was talking there, Daniel was talking there. Loads of it. Was really enjoyed it. Yeah, I think Kerry did from Vega Light to Vega. If that's incorrect, I apologize, Kerry. It was nice.
Yeah, no, I watched the second session of that. It's tough for me because of the timing. All the sessions are either like 2, 3 in the morning, or late in the afternoon. So I'm going to have to go back and watch a lot of the recorded sessions. But that was one that I did catch yesterday, and it was really good. And then the live Q&A with her as well was great.
Daniel has a session in 2 hours. What's going on there? Daniel's a busy guy. He's everywhere, you know. Everyone wants a piece of Daniel.
He's apparently taking time off right now. Meanwhile, he's got a session in a couple hours.
Yeah, this is Daniel just relaxing a little bit, right? No, yeah. Anyway, but other than data visual, you said that you don't do much of that in your day to day. What actually is your day to day? What do you spend most of your time doing other than data visualization side? Are you getting deep down dirty and messy data, or what?
Well, no, it is data visualization. It's just not the kind of fun, creative kind of stuff.
Okay.
There's been a lot of work that we've done. So in the military, there's a huge love for PowerPoint. So a lot of what we've done is get people off of these PowerPoint presentations that take forever to manually construct and everything, with a lot of time, and convert them into Power BI reports that allow for real-time, or almost closer to real-time data from a governed source, with interactivity and all that kind of stuff. So there's been some really good reception with that, and some of our stuff has really gained popularity, where we're going beyond just the target commands that we're working with and really expanding.
Interesting.
So it's all, that kind of stuff is definitely really good. There's a lot to consider with that, with the data, on the data modeling side of things. Even though we have an awesome architected huge data warehouse that's documented very well.
Okay, nice.
Even still, you have to, one of the biggest things, no matter what you're doing in Power BI, the data model is a huge component. If you don't get that right, you're not going to get the presentation layer right. So Yeah, just a lot of that
Nice.
normal kind of Power BI stuff, but less fun stuff.
I'm gonna take that information. I'm gonna pose a weird question because I've decided in the past few days that Microsoft are really too liberal with the use of the word power. So, and I think they should redesign or rename some products. Now, even Microsoft love to rename products. So I think they'll enjoy this as well. So now that we have the Power package, if you have your PowerPoint, Power Query, and Power Automate, and Power Apps, all that type of stuff, is it not time to drop the power from the PowerPoint? And could we also extend that also to PowerShell? Now, I'm not saying this should be called Point and Shell, but I think they should change the name because it's like not everything can be Power, okay? And what was considered Power when you named this program like 35 years ago, or whatever, it's not Power anymore.
So I mean, you've got the Power Platform, so it just got a little bit confusing with
Yeah,
PowerPoint. I would say I would have a harder time with PowerShell. I could see, it'll be that takes some consideration for changing. For PowerPoint though, there's there's some things that it can do that I've just like learned recently that probably people have known forever. But like the ability to generate SVGs or GIFs from videos, like high quality GIFs, um, just some of the capabilities in PowerPoint for not direct like presentation stuff, I think are actually kind of cool. But as far as being the actual name itself, I see what you're saying. It's been PowerPoint forever. And now
yeah.
you've got the Power Platform. It's kind of conflicts. Yeah.
It is. I agree with it. It does do some cool stuff, and Kerry's right. PowerPoint is awesome. I'm not saying I don't like the program. I'm just saying, has it earned? I mean, maybe that's the question. Has PowerPoint done enough to earn that or retain the power in its name? Should it be
Well,
renamed to PresiPoint?
well, I think if we're going to keep it, then Excel should be pretty jealous. I mean, Power Excel. Why don't we?
Exactly. Right. Exactly. That's a very solid point. How come Power gets a PowerPoint gets power, but Excel just sits there with Excel? You know?
It doesn't fall off the tongue like PowerPoint, I guess.
It does not at all. Power Excel. There you go. Just power everything. Bring it all in there. I don't know. PowerShell. I can't comment on. I don't know it well enough. But I was probably one of those moments where you just like sitting there and you're doing work that you can kind of do repetitively. Like maybe I was working a report and just kind of moving some stuff around, and my brain wanders, and I'm like, Microsoft use the word power far too often. And this is where I am. No.
It's funny because I hadn't even thought about that, but yeah, you've got the whole Power Platform. And
It probably says more about me, the fact that I have been thinking about it. It's not the sort of thing that a normal brain thinks about, to be honest. So I was just like, yeah, this is.
yeah, bring it up to Microsoft and get their feedback.
I will, and like I say, they do love renaming stuff for no apparent reason. So I think that would be a project that they'd be very interested in. Just to keep people on their toes. I can come up with a list of suggestions that they can change it to, and I'll see what they say. So basically, what I'm trying to say is that if in the next year, if PowerPoint gets renamed, it might be my fault. So feel free to direct the hate towards me.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, maybe less people will be using it for presentations, and they'll go for more Power BI or where it's applicable. When you've got a data-centric presentation, they can't find PowerPoint.
What's older, PowerPoint or Excel?
My guess would be Excel.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know either. I'm just curious. But I guess probably Excel would be fair. Yeah. I'm just curious now. I don't know. Not that it's important again, but it's just it's one of those things that is now I'm gonna Google this, of course, as soon as we finish the live stream to see which is older, unless someone tells me. Unless someone's gonna Google it for me now and put it in the chat, which I appreciate that, to be honest. But yeah, what are you gonna do?
Right.
Excel, of course, 99. Okay, 995. Okay, but that's the question of when did PowerPoint come into to play? I thought Excel would have been like older, to be honest. I thought Excel was like late 80s. Like I say, I remember my dad was using like Lotus 1, 2, 3 and stuff back in the day, right?
That's what I was going to say. It's like before that was no Lotus. Yeah.
Oh, 85. That makes more sense. Yeah, okay. If it was 95, it would have been like, that's not, yeah. Look, see, Donald's doing all the Googling for us. What a legend. Cheers, mate. So there you go. 85 and 87. Pretty close.
I wouldn't have guessed the PowerPoint was that old. Huh?
I would love to see the original version of PowerPoint. I think most people have seen a very basic version of Excel, but the original version of PowerPoint must be brilliantly terrible. In New Zealand, we have PowerShells, pronounced power, which is a weird mental association. I have. I love that. That's really cool. We have power. Okay, it's pronounced power, which is a weird. That makes sense. Yeah, you could do. You can do a PowerShell script about PowerShells somehow, and then put it in a PowerPoint presentation. Anyway, sorry, I'm rambling on now. Jesus Christ, this is
No,
like,
okay.
it gets
Yeah.
bad from my side. But yeah,
I was gonna say one thing, because I know we're getting kind of close on time. I don't know, but the day you reached out to me for this, you had posted about your son creating a data visualization with his Legos.
yeah.
That was awesome, and it immediately made me think of my oldest, who is he's going to be 7 soon, and he loves like all the data visualization stuff, especially like the interactive ones. He's all about
Cool.
it.
That's awesome.
So, yeah, but I thought that was really neat.
So with your son, you can we take an active interest in the stuff that you do. Yeah, that's quite nice.
Right, I'll be doing something, usually in Vega or whatever, and he'll come in and say, oh, "You're working on another data visualization," and then he'll just ask me about it and all that kind of stuff. And then he'll say, "Can I do it?" I'm like, "Oh, this one's not interactive," and he'll sound all disappointed. So yeah,
Nice.
cool.
I love that. It's really. I think it's been a while, but I think the kids, of course, I work from home, so the kids look at my screen sometimes to see what's going on. But I remember it was a few years ago now. It was my daughter, and she asked me what I was doing, like what my job was, and I showed her. Then I said, "This is a tool. It's Power BI. I do this. I can do that." And then, even for me, I kept it concise, which I'm not very good at. And for some reason, when I finished, I said to her, "Do you think it's cool?" I don't know why I asked that question. And of course, she just looked at me and she said no, and just walked off. And I was like, "All right, cool, cheers."
That would
really
be my daughter's 3, but if I were to ask her that when she gets a little bit older, she'd have the same response. Totally different personalities.
Yeah, exactly. But my son with Lego, it's crazy. So we for Christmas we bought him like this, the AT-AT thing from Star Wars,
Yep.
And we bought him like this Lego AT-AT thing. And we're like, oh great, that'll keep him. And I was actually a bit worried because on Christmas, on Boxing Day, the day after Christmas, he was flying to Italy with my wife, with his mum, and so Florence. We bought him this Lego thing. It's a shame because he won't be able to finish it because he'll start building it and then he's going to go away for a week and he'll come back and he'll be disappointed. I've never seen him so focused than when he plays with Lego. It's ridiculous. He had this thing and he spent the entire of Christmas Day and he managed to build the entire Lego AT-AT in like probably in total like 5 hours. And I was like, I did not think that was going to happen at all. He just didn't stop. I couldn't do that, man.
No way. That's super impressive. I mean,
yeah, it's.
And how old did you say he was?
He's 7. He's 7.
7.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's really neat.
He's really. When he plays with Lego, he'll just be like sitting there, and you can see it really means something to him. He'll be like focused. Like when I was a kid, I loved Lego. I'll play and I'll like build spaceships and stuff. And but yeah, I'd love it. It's really interesting to see him play with all the stuff that he comes up with. So when he did the data visual, and of course he didn't even know it was a data visualization. He was like, oh yeah, it's this thing, and each stack each stack like shows how powerful each strength is. I loved it, and I was just kind of like, that's awesome. That's such a cool use of Lego.
Yes. No, I'm glad you posted that. That was really neat.
Yeah, it's awesome. Cheers, mate. Hang on 1 second. That's cool. See, my youngest daughter's face lights up when I do a YouTube video. See, Mum's a YouTube star. That's why. Awesome, very cool. Very cool.
It's really neat.
Actually, I'll just put one fun. Sorry, but we're going over time. I apologize. But Kerry before posted that she said she thought her video was choppy when she did, and I didn't find it so. But anyway, thinking about the videos and Kerry's being choppy, but not really. When I recorded that video for the Power BI Fabric Summit, I recorded it. I was fairly happy with it. I edited it in the way that it kind of was all right and kind of looked how I wanted to look. And then I played it back. And when I would be recording, I had like not a massive, but a mild cold, but somehow I'd positioned the microphone that it was kind of like probably like just under my nose. So like every single time I sniffed, it was extremely loud, and it was also very frequent. So I was like, what can I do? I either have to re-record the entire video, or is there some way? And what I did was I went through the entire audio track and I found each sniff. And when I sniffed, I muted the audio. It took me so long to
Oh,
sort that out. But I had to, because you know when something's so annoying it even annoys you. And I was like, if it annoys me, it's gonna annoy everyone. It was, for me, it was like I couldn't listen to it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. At least you didn't want it to distract anyone from the content
Yeah.
too. Yeah. But yeah,
It was a night to hear it. I was like, no man, please, please not this.
this is my first Radicat, but it's really cool that you all got the opportunity to like record the sessions first, so like get them really refined and all that.
Yeah.
It's nice instead of having to give it live. Well, you still get the live component with the Q&A.
Exactly. I'll be honest, if I had the choice, I would rather do it live than record. It is nice to record because you can ensure that everything works. Like there's not going to be, you're not going to, if you have a technical problem, whatever, you can just stop it, re-record or edit again. But for me, I think the live experience is a bit nicer because it feels a bit more like interactive somehow, you know? It feels somehow a bit like more authentic, but I understand it. So there are definite pros to the pre-recorded version. I'm not sure, 1 second. Have you heard this question as the response? Those spot versus Power BI versus Tableau, or why should we choose one from the other? So I'm not sure what's those spot. What's this?
I'm not sure either.
The question I find interesting, because I mean the question that I usually see is just Power BI versus Tableau, right?
Right.
And I'll be honest, I don't read those articles anymore because some of them are so factually incorrect. It's crazy. And it's just, to me, it's not about like, it's just about, you know, what does your company use? What ThoughtSpot? Okay. Sorry, I'm still don't know what it is. What your company needs, what the tool does, and then just pick the one that works well, basically. But I don't know ThoughtSpot at all. So
Yeah, if I mean, that's something I would love to just become more familiar with Tableau. There was a time where we thought, you know, we already had Cognos, we got Power BI, and we thought we were going to possibly add Tableau too. So the idea of learning that platform would have been really, really cool. But it's one of those things like if you know you're not going to use it,
exactly,
it's hard to, you know, invest the time to learn. When that's another thing with like Power BI. I mean, how do you go about with just everything coming out and everything? How do you like keep track of all the new stuff coming out? How do you I know you can't really learn everything. How do you decide like what you're gonna, you know, spend your time in learning, you know?
This thing with ThoughtSpot seems, I mean, it's like just on the website now, it says the only AI powered analytics platform built for humans. So I'm sure it's interesting. I'll have to look through it more. I have a general concern at the moment with all AI things, because of how the market is immediately flooded with AI tools that do AI things. And I don't know. I'm sure it does some really cool stuff, so I'm not going to comment on it too much because I've got no idea what I'm talking about. But generally speaking, from the AI perspective, it's like, oh yes, this thing, and now it has AI functionality, or this AI thing does that. It's like, how much can you actually separate the human understanding of what it's doing from actually the data side itself, you know? So I'm not sure what it does, but like, I don't like that whole separation of knowledge from the tool, you know?
I
Like,
got you.
AI is going to do all this, therefore it's just done. It kind of concerns me. But
Well, you know, I'm glad the question was asked because again, I hadn't heard of it, so I'm definitely gonna spend some time just googling it just so I can, you know, learn more about it.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, so thanks for the question. I'll help me learn something as well. Much appreciated. Anyway, we're over time, and you're a busy person, so I don't want to take up too much of it. I will say thank you so much, mate. I really enjoyed this chat. It was really cool.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for having me on, reaching out to me and everything. Really, really appreciate it. It's an honor. So thank you.
Thank you, mate. It's cool. And I'll speak to you at some point in the future. I look forward to that as well. Everyone in the chat asking the questions and answering our questions that we didn't know the answer to. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. I guess I won't be back next week because I'll be in Frankfurt, but I'll be back the week after next. And I can't remember with who because I never can because I'm very forgetful. But thanks, everyone. Much appreciated. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
A little kickstart, 'cause don't you wanna